Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another WordPress tutorial. In this video, we're going to talk about an Ajax form submit. In my last video, I showed you guys how to create a form, submit it to a process page, and then redirect the user to a thank you page. Now, in this video, I want to show you guys how to do it through an Ajax call so the user doesn't even have to leave the page that they submit from. And we can even make it to where when they submit, then it can actually redirect them to a thank you page. So that's what we're going to do in this video. I really appreciate all the comments and likes and stuff that you guys have put on the video. One of the questions I have for you guys is, I really want to know what you guys are developing for. Are you doing it just to learn? Are you doing it for your own company? Are you working for a company? Do you do WordPress websites now and you want to just build upon the level of experience that you have or skills that you have? So leave me a comment and let me know what you guys are doing and what you're using the skills for. Okay, so let's get started on building a form that submits through an Ajax call. So here on our ideapro.io site that we do testing and plugins and stuff like that with, we're on the front page here, and then we're on the dashboard. So what we're going to do is we're going to build a complete plugin. So this is going to be a standalone plugin. I'm not going to expand on the previous plugin. We're going to build a whole new plugin, and that you guys can download the file if you want to and expand on it from there. All right. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a new page. And we need to save this page in our plugins directory. Okay, so we're going to create a new folder, and this one's going to be, let's call it Idea Pro Contact Form Ajax. Okay, and then so that's our folder that we created. So now we need to use that same Idea Pro Contact Form Ajax.php. So when you're building a plugin, the folder name needs to have a file that is the same name as the folder name .php, so that WordPress can find the folder and the file that associated with that file. Okay. So up here at the top, we're going to add some PHP tags, and then we're going to put in a comment here and plugin name. And this is going to be Idea Pro Contact Form Ajax. Name. And then we're going to use a description here. This form submits through an Ajax call. Okay. We're going to add a couple little things here. Now, as I've said in previous videos, you can add more into the comments up here, like author URL, plugin URL, version number and all that stuff. Typically, whenever I'm building it for one of our sites, even sometimes one of our clients' websites, and we know we're not going to reuse that plugin again, or we're not going to put that plugin into the marketplace, then we usually keep the comments, that section just kind of short, just for ease of building it. All right. So now under this, what I like to do, let's go ahead and save it. Let's go over to our page here. Let's go to plugins, and we're going to look for Idea Pro Contact Form Ajax, and this is it here. And so we're going to activate that. And so now our plugin is activated, but it doesn't do anything. Over here on our on our plugin code, we're going to write out a few things that we need to do so that we don't forget. Okay, so I'm going to make a comment here. I'm just going to call this my list of items. All right, and then we'll come down here. We're going to say ... and we're going to turn that off. All right. So one of the first things that we need to do is we need to write the form code as a short code. I like to make just a kind of a list of what we need to do here. So that was number one. Number two is we need to write the process page that it submits to. 3, we need to write the JavaScript / Ajax that will take the submission. Okay. And then 4, we're going to write the email send function. What we're going to call it, right? Okay. So write the email send function. I'll get that straight in just a second. All right. So I'm not going to get into the sending of the email. I've created an email template in a previous plugin. I've also done a plugin or done a video where I show you guys how to set up an SMTP server. If you haven't watched those videos, go watch those. I can link the SMTP server into a card here. And it's important that you send your emails out through an SMTP server to make sure that the recipients actually receive the email. Now, if you're developing on a local machine, more than likely your local machine is not going to have an email server set up to send out emails. So it's better to do it on a hosted platform, whether it's GoDaddy or Bluehost or HostGator or something like that. But make sure that the hosting that you buy allows emails to be sent out from your website through an SMTP server. Now, that sounds kind of general, and you think that all of them would do that, but I actually had a client that bought hosting through GoDaddy. We were developing his site and no emails were going out. And I'm like, I know the code is right. And he gave me his GoDaddy credentials. I logged in to look at what hosting he had purchased. And sure enough, the hosting that he had purchased was like the base, the lowest that they could go. And they didn't allow emails to be sent out through an SMTP server from the website. Blew me away. I'd never heard of that before. I couldn't believe that they would actually sell hosting that does that, but they do. So make sure that your hosting provider allows emails to be sent out through an SMTP server, and set up that SMTP plugin to do that, all right? So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to write a function to be the short code for our form, all right? So we're going to say idea pro contact form. All right. And so then here underneath, we're going to say add short code and some parentheses. Our first argument in here is going to be what we're going to call as the short code on our page or post. And so that's going to be, let's just say contact form. Let's keep it short. So if you use something like that and then later find out that another plugin you're using is using that same short code, you can come back in here and change this and it's not going to break anything. You just have to change it on the post or page that you added it to. All right. So this next argument is going to be the function that we're using here as the callback. So now anything that we put in this function will be our short code that shows up on the website when we use it on a page or post. As I've said in previous videos about short codes, you never want to echo anything out from the short code because it will break certain things on the website. You always want to return the data. So I'm going to use, I always like to use a variable. So let's create a variable, string variable. Let's call it a string variable. String variable to hold the content. Okay. So we're going to use a string called content, and we're going to say equals to in single quotes. Now these two single quotes here creates a string. PHP knows that you're using two single quotes or two double quotes, and that is, you're creating a string variable. All right. And so you can call this whatever you want. You can say content, you can say string, you can say con, you can say, shorten it to whatever you want. Ours, I just use content to make it easy. And then down here, we're going to return the content. Okay, so now add a little bit of space in here. We're going to save this, and we're going to add this short code to our website. So we're going to copy this part here. We're going to come over to our site. We're going to go to Pages, and we're going to add this on the Contact Us page, which right now I just have some lorem ipsum text in there. So we're going to remove this, and we're going to add a short code. So right there it is. And we're going to add 2 square brackets and then the variable that we use there, which is contact form. All right, and so we're going to update that. And if it updates and doesn't cause an error, then we've done everything right. If for whatever reason we decided we wanted to write echo and say welcome to the site, and we save that, we come back over here and we update. See how it causes this error? That is because we have that short code echoing something out to the browser, and the JSON that is collected and submitted to update this page won't allow, it breaks the JSON. It's not formatted correctly. So we don't want to echo anything out. I did have a comment where somebody was asking about using OB start, which is, I'm not going to get into that. It adds a level of complexity to everything, and I like to keep everything simple, right? So we're going to come back and we'll save this, and we're going to update again. And now that we've taken that echo out, it works, all right? So we're going to write well, let me show you this real quick too. If we actually go to this page, here is the contact page. Let's add a little bit of text above this. Let's do it down here. We'll do an H2. Let's do an H2 that says contact form. And we're going to put this above that for update, just so you guys can see that we're actually on the contact page. All right. And it doesn't show anything from our short code because we haven't added anything in the code. Right? So we're going to do content dot equals from this point forward, because that concatenates the string content. Basically, it continues to add on to that string. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to say form method is equal to post action is equal to, and we're going to leave that blank for just a second. Then we're going to come down here and we're going to do content dot equals, and we're going to close the form tag, not with an M in front of it. There we go. All right, so now we've created our form tag, and right now the action doesn't submit anywhere. So as I've done that, I've actually not needed that, right? So I'm going to comment this out here and comment it out here. We're going to submit through an Ajax call. And with an Ajax call, we don't need those form tags. I do want to put them in there just in case I say, oh, let's not use Ajax, let's go to a post submit. And then if we do that, we can take out the Ajax, the JavaScript call, and we can go back to just a form submit. If something was going wrong and people were saying, hey, I can't submit your form, you have these tags that are ready to go. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put in some input fields. So content dot equals, and we're going to put in a label and close the label. So this is going to be your name, and here we can say for, and it's going to be your name. And underneath this, we content dot equals. This is going to be our input field. Input type is equal to text. Name is equal to your name, and we're going to put an ID is equal to your name. It's important for each of your fields to have an ID. So, and we're going to keep them pretty simple. Now we want to do the same thing for email address, and we can call this, we can have an email type. We can say your email, and we'll put in here in our label your email address. Your email address, there we go. So your email, all right. And ID is your email. Placeholder, we didn't add that on the first one. We'll go back and put that here. Oops. Placeholder. Can't type for some reason. Enter your email address. All right. So placeholder. Oh, come on. Your full name. All right. So now we have your full name, your email address. We're going to copy this and we're going to create one that is your phone number. Phone number, so there's a phone number like that. Phone number, we're going to change this one to a text, and in the placeholder, we're going to say your phone number. And then to make sure we change that the ID to, we'll just say phone number. All right, so now we have their first name, last name, their full name, their email address, phone number. Now we want kind of a comment section that they can add comments. All right, we're going to copy another one. And so this one we're going to say questions or comments. All right, so we can say your underscore comments. There we go. So this is going to be a text area. So we're going to take all this out. And we're going to say text area. We're going to close the text area. And we're going to say name is equal to your comments. ID is equal to your comments. And placeholder, we can even do a placeholder on this one. Placeholder, and we're going to say something nice. All right, so now we have your name, email address, phone number, comments, and that's really all we're going to put into the fields. Now, I'm not adding any style to this, so it's going to look really, really bad. We could easily come back up, even above here if we wanted to, and do content dot equals, and add a style sheet if we wanted to be really lazy and do it right here. And that way we could say a label is a display block. Padding is, let's do 8 pixels on top. We'll do 0 pixels on the right, let's do 4 pixels below and 0 pixels on the left. All right, so that's going to give us some padding, so we'll show you how that looks really quick. So now we simply have that label like that. Now that's going to change, this style here is going to change any label on the website where this contact form shows up. So we probably would want to do something that encases this. So we could let's actually do it on a different line here. Content equals dot, and we're going to say div, and then down here we could do a div content dot equals, and we're going to close this div. That way we're wrapping the entire thing, and we're going to say class is equal to idea pro form. So then we can, up here we can say dot idea pro form label like that, and now the only thing that would happen would be our idea pro would now show that labels under this idea pro form class div would change those labels only, right? So then underneath that we could also put in idea pro form input type is equal to text. We don't actually need the double quotes. Text, and this we could do, all right, let's just do width is 400 pixels. Padding is 8 pixels. All right. So now if we refresh, we come back over here, and now we have your name and phone number is big. So then we can do comma input type is equal to email, save, and then we refresh. So now our email address field is big, and now we've got questions and comments that are kind of down here by themselves. All right, so then we can do here, we can say dot idea pro form text area width is 400 pixels and height is, whoa, let's go back, we don't want that. Height is equal to 200 pixels, might not be enough, but we'll see. And then the padding is going to be 8 pixels. Let's just do that and see what it looks like. Come back over here and refresh. All right, so now we've added a little bit of size to our form and a little bit of style to it, and I think it's enough for this example. We could, change the label boldness and stuff like that. May want to add just a little bit more height above this label here, so we'll say 15 pixels. That way it gives a little bit more separation between each one of these form fields. Okay, so now we've got that contact form that we've kind of built, and now we need a button. So down here we're going to do another content.equals, and we can put in a input type is equal to submit. Name is equal to idea pro contact submit, and then we're going to close this off. We're going to take this here and we're going to do it as an ID. Whoops, that is not what we wanted. ID is equal to, and we're going to use that same idea contact submit. And so then our value is going to be what the button is actually going to say. And we're just going to say submit your information. Okay. And we're not going to style that button. We're not going to take the time to do that. But it's going to show up here. We could add, a couple of breaks in here just for laziness here. All right, so now we have our submit button, and it's kind of bland and not styled, but I'm not going to worry about going through that in this video. We could style it, but we're not going to. All right, so back over here on our code, now we need a on-click for JavaScript. So we're going to say on-click, and we're going to equal that to submit contact form and 2 parentheses here. So this is going to be our call that we're going to do in the JavaScript to grab all this information and submit it through Ajax. All right, so now that we have our form built, save this, we'll come back over, refresh, just make sure it's ready to go. All right, so now we have our form. Now we need to write the JavaScript that's going to call that form, or going to get all that information and submit it. Now, on this site, on our ideapro.io site, we don't have Jquery loaded on the site. Most websites are going to have Jquery loaded in the site. Ours, we've removed it. So we're going to have to add Jquery back in, but for the most part, your site should have Jquery in it. We can do this. If it doesn't, you can follow what I'm going to do and add Jquery to your site, but you don't need to probably. It probably already has Jquery in it. All right, so we're going to write a new function here. That is add JavaScript let's do Idea Pro. Idea Pro add JavaScript. So all of your functions need to have unique names. You don't want, let's add a little bit of space in here. You don't want to write a function that is already in your website somewhere. So you want to make sure that it's got some kind of unique name so that it doesn't conflict with another function, right? And so this function is going to add JavaScript to the footer of our website. So we need to do an add action. And this first argument is going to be WP_foot. And the next argument here is going to be our JavaScript callback function. All right. And that may be footer. We'll see if it works. WP foot, I think that's right. WP footer. Maybe footer. All right, we'll see. We'll see what happens. All right. So here we're going to close the PHP tags, and we're going to come in here and we're going to actually go to Google hosted libraries. Now, I'll put a link in the description for Google hosted libraries, but you can go to Google and just say Google hosted libraries, and you should be able to pull up this page without any problem. And now my battery's trying to die on my audio. Awesome. Maybe that'll wait. All right, so now we're going to come down here to jQuery. We're going to find this code here. We're going to use jQuery 3. So we're going to take this script and we're going to bring it over to our code, and we're going to add that in there. And so now we can save this, go to our page here, or our Contact Us page here, refresh, look at the source of the page, and see if we have jQuery down here, and we don't. So it needs to be WP footer. I haven't done this in a while, so then we'll refresh, and now we have jQuery down here at the very bottom. So it was WP footer, all right? So now we have jQuery in our footer. Now we need to create another script, and SRC is going to be the location of our JavaScript file that we're going to create. So we're going to create a new page, and we're going to save that, and this is going to go into our plugins folder here that we created, and we're going to add a new folder and call it JS, and we're going to say scripts. Let's call it ideapro.js. Okay, we're going to save that. So now we're going to come back over here, and our SRC is going to be https www.ideapro.io. I think I'm using www. Let's take a look. Yep, IdeaPro, www.ideapro.io/wp content/plugins/ IdeaPro-contact-form-Ajax /JS/ideapro.js. All right. So now that is going to include into our page here. Now we have jQuery, and we have the IdeaPro contact form JS that goes here. All right. So now we've got our JavaScript loaded. Okay. So now over here on our JavaScript page, we need to write a function that submits the contact form. Right? So we're going to come down a couple things here and say function submit contact form. All right. So now anything that we do in here is going to run when we click that submit button. So we're going to need to write some code for that. And now if we go back over here and refresh, go over here and refresh the thing here. If we open this JS file, now you'll see our function submit contact form here as the JavaScript. Right? Now I'm leaving a little bit of space up here at the top just to make it easier for you guys to see it, but typically we would not leave any space. I would minify the JavaScript and stuff like that. But for this example, we're just going to leave it like that. All right. So now what we need to do is we're going to write a Ajax callback function. You don't necessarily have to write it as a callback. but I like to write it as a function that I can use over and over and over. So if I have multiple things that use an Ajax call, I can just write a simple function that uses that same call over and over and over, all right? So that's what we're going to do here, is we're going to write a function, and we're going to call it JS submit. And this is going to have a couple of arguments in there. So the couple of arguments that we're going to do is FD, and I'll explain these here in just a few minutes, and then we're going to do a callback as a second argument. Inside of this JavaScript here, this JS submit, we're going to add some code that we can use over and over and over that will be a function. Here in this, we're going to declare a variable, which we're going to call submit URL, and that is going to equal our process page. So HTTPS, www.ideapro.io/wp-contents/plugins/ideapro contact form Ajax /process/index.php. Okay, we haven't created that page yet, so we need to do that now. So we're going to save that. We're going to create a new page, and we're going to call it index.php. So we're going to save that. We're going to go back out into our IdeaPro contact form Ajax page. We're going to create a new folder and call it process. And then in here, we have this index.php page. So now we can take this out. I just do that so that the system already knows to call it the index.php page. So we're going to add some PHP tags here. Save that. Now, here in our JavaScript, we've actually added index.php, but we don't need to. We can take that out. So that's where we're going to be submitting all of our calls to, is this process page, this index.php on this process folder. All right, so let's add a couple more lines here. So on this process page, we're going to build this out here in just a minute. And in the last video where I made a contact form that submits to that process page and then redirects, it's the same thing. We're just going to capture a different form. And you can use this process page to capture, post form submits, get form submits, and Ajax call form submits, all right? That's what we're going to do. Okay, so now here underneath this submit URL, we're going to write an Ajax call. So we're going to say $.ajax, and we're going to open up some parentheses here, and then we're going to close it off like this. And inside of here, we're going to add some arguments and add some code in here that will run when we call this function. All right. So the first thing we want to do is we want to say URL and semicolon, and that's going to be submit URL that we added up here. Okay. And then we're going to call a type, and that's going to be post. And then we're going to call data, and that's going to be the FD, and that's going to come up from right here that we're calling into this function. And I'll explain what that FD is here in just a minute. And then we're going to say content type, and that is going to be, we're just going to use false right now. So basically what the content type is you're basically telling Ajax what you're submitting. So whether it's application/JSON, whether you're submitting JSON information or whether it's UTF-8, we're not going to worry about that in this. We're just going to tell it false, and then we're going to do process data, and we're also going to say false on that. And basically, what process data is we're telling Ajax not to worry about touching any of the data that we're submitting. Just leave it alone and just do as we tell you to do. But basically, process data, Ajax will process that data for like URL encoding and stuff like that. And I can make another video that goes deeper into the Ajax calls and what the content type and the process data and all that stuff does. But I'm not going to do that on this video because it would extend this video and make it really, really long. All right. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to do a success. That is going to, we're going to actually write a function inside of this that's going to be a callback. Okay. So we're going to say function in parentheses, and then we're going to open up some curly brackets here. And we're going to say in this function, we want the response. And then inside these curly brackets, we want to do a callback. And then some curly brackets here and close that function off. And inside of here, we're going to say response. All right. And so that is pretty much what we need in there. Let me make sure my code is right here. Callback. I feel like we're missing something at the end here. We're missing the ending curly brace here, and then at the first, before this URL tag, we need a curly brace. All right, so basically what this does is it adds a curly brace in the front and a curly brace in the back here. All right, so that should be it. We probably wouldn't need this last comma, but we're gonna leave it in there just in case we need to add something to it. I think that's it though. I think that's our full callback. Now what we need to do is we need to create a callback function on our submit contact form, right? So function submit contact form callback. So now in our callback here, we need to add, actually submit, we need to do some stuff up here. We need to do some stuff here in our callback, and then we can process the information over here on our process index.php. So form contact, submit contact form, we're going to write some code in here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create the FD variable that we're going to use in our callback here. And so FD is going to equal to new form data. All right. So this is basically a object. It's, a new class that we're calling here. And we're going to store all the form data information in this variable FD, pass it through to our JS submit as the variable FD, and then pass it on to the process index.php page. All right. So now we want to do fd.append. So we're appending the data for each one of the fields to that FD variable. All right. So in each one of these, we're going to call two arguments. The first one is going to be the field name, and then the field value. All right. So here we're going to do $, open brackets, and then a £. And for right now, we're going to just call this field name, and then we're going to do dot value, and we're going to close that off with a, no, we don't need to do that. We don't need to close it off with a semicolon. Okay, so now I've just used field name here as an example to make multiples really, really easy. All right, so we come back over here to our form, and then we need to look for each ID. So first one we're going to do is your name. So we can copy this ID, come over, and this one is going to be name, and it's the ID is field name and dot value. So we're going to add to the name variable the value of that field. Okay. And before I did that, I wanted to actually copy and count. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4 different fields that we're going to be submitting to. So we want to make 4 of these. 2, 3, 4. Okay, that's why I did that to begin with. So your name, we're going to come over here and your name. And so we can just call this name and then email, and that's going to be your email. Make sure those match your IDs over here, which is your email. So this one is phone number. So we'll copy that. We'll come over here and we can just say phone and paste in phone number ID there. And then the last one, we called it your comments. So we can say comments and we're going to say your comments. Okay, so now we have all the data from our form and we're going to pass that to our JS submit function here. All right. So the way we do that is we're going to say JS submit, and the first one is going to be FD, which is all of this information right here combined into one variable that we're passing to here. And then we're going to do our callback function. So we're going to call this and put that here. Now what that's going to do is in our JavaScript, our JS submit down here, it's going to get all this information and add it to this callback and put the response in there. So this is where we've done this callback, and so this variable here actually creates whatever function we do. So instead of this calling a callback function here, it's actually going to call the submit contact form callback. So we could easily do this and come down and replace that with this. And so submit callback, contact form callback. But so we can use this JavaScript, this JS submit over and over and over. We're going to leave it as callback, and then we'll pass in that submit contact form callback function or whatever we call that callback function. So now in here, we want to call this variable data, right? So this data is the response that we're going to get. So here it's called response, but we've changed that and we're just going to call it data to make it a little bit easier. So then in here, we're going to call a variable and call this JData. And we're going to say that's equal to json.parse. And we're going to put data in here. Now what that's going to do is the data we're going to get back from the process index.php, we're going to put that into a JSON format. JSON is a script that basically takes an array or an object and puts it into a comma separated value kind of format. If you don't know what JSON is, you should look it up. But basically it's a real easy way to pass data between different types of languages. All right. So we're going to, once our form submits and processes, we're going to send back some information to let our function know that the information's been submitted, and then we're going to do something with that data. All right, and we're going to do that through using JSON. Okay, so now that we have this, we're going to come over to our process.index.php page. Now, the one thing that we did up here is we called in name, email, phone, comments. We're going to add in one more at the top here for fd.append, and this is going to be the so idea pro contact submit is what we're going to call this one here, and we're just going to use value of 1 there. So basically this is what we're going to call to let us know that that form has been submitted. Okay, so we're going to copy that, save that, and we're using the type down here as post, just like we would if we were submitting a form. So on this index.php page here, we're going to say if is set $_post, and then that variable that we created over there, idea pro contact submit, that comes from right here. And we can even say and $_post, the same variable, is equal to 1, just if we wanted to make sure that it was actually equal to 1 and not something else, right? So Now we're going to run anything in here. Before we do that, we need to make sure that we include the WP load that brings in all the WordPress functions. So the way we're going to do that, and I did this in the previous video, so that if you need more explanation, we're going to create a path variable up here, and we're going to say preg replace, and inside of here, our first argument, sorry, had a brain loss for a minute, second argument, and then our third argument is going to be _dir __. All right. And I'm not going to explain that in this one. If you need to know what that is, go watch my previous video. So in here, we're going to say WP content dot $. Let me think about this. Dot $. Is that right? Dot star $. Dot star $. Is that right? Slash. Yeah, that's right. Okay. So basically what that does is it says, hey, I need to get the directory that this file is in, which is going to include https www.ideapro.com / blah, blah, blah. It's going to include all that WP content, all that stuff. And I want to get to the root of the WordPress folder. So I want to remove WP content and everything after WP content. So then down here, we can say require once. And we're going to say path dot, add some brackets here, or some double quotes, load.php. So basically what that does is this path up here gets the root of our WordPress website. Now this is thinking that your WP content folder exists and you didn't change that folder in some weird way. But if you have the WP content folder, it basically removes everything out of that path, WP load, and that is going to bring in all the functions and everything of the rest of our WordPress website. Okay, so we're going to save that. All right, so now inside of this here, we're going to actually process the form data that's being submitted. Okay, so if we look, we've got name, email, phone, comments. So we're going to make some name equals to, and we're just going to close that off for a minute. Email is equal to, close that off for a second. Phone is equal to, we'll close that off. And then comments equal to, we're going to close that off. Okay. So now what this is going to do is it's going to get the information from the post submit. All right. So now this first one is a text field. So we're going to say sanitize text field. And if you haven't watched my previous video, where I talked a little bit about sanitizing the information, it's basically cleaning out anything that shouldn't be there, like HTML, characters, and stuff like that. I'm going to do a full video on sanitizing your data, and then I'm going to do another video on escaping your data. But in this, I just want to do some basic kind of stuff, and because the video is already extremely long. Sanitize text field, and we're going to say $_post. And that field is name. And then in this one, we're going to say sanitize, make sure I'm spelling it right, email. And this is going to be $_post. And we're going to say email. Now what sanitize email does is it makes sure that it's doesn't have any spaces and stuff like that in it, because you'd be surprised at the number of people that submit a form and actually have a space, first name, space, last name, @gmail.com, right? So we're going to sanitize the email to remove any spaces and make sure that that email is correct. All right. So phone, we're going to sanitize the text field for the phone, because it's just we didn't do any kind of special field for that. So it's going to be $_post and phone. All right. Now comments is a text area. So we're going to say sanitize text area, and that's going to be, that's going to be $_post comments. All right. So sanitize text area basically strips out a lot of HTML and special characters and stuff, but it still maintains your paragraphs and stuff like that if someone adds in, breaks and stuff like that. So now we've got our data submitting. We need to create a submit some information to go back to the user before we really send an email. So let's make a couple of notes here. We're going to say write email information for the for sending to admin. Let's just call it that, right? All right. And so then now down here we need to return something for the user. All right. So right here we're going to do a return variable. So we're going to say return, and that's just going to be equal to an array. So those two square brackets creates an array. So then we're going to say return, and we're going to say success is equal to 1, and return message is equal to your information has been received. All right. So we're not really going to get into it here. We're just going to create a quick, simple send email. If we wanted to, we could say if the email didn't get sent, then return a error message. We could say success is equal to 1. Everything went through perfectly fine. Show this message. If everything didn't go through, you could say success is equal to 2, and then say cause an error. Say what the error message is. But we're going to keep it simple. We're just going to say success is equal to 1, and message is equal to your information has been received. Okay. So here we're going to say $2 is equal to, and I'm just going to send this to my business email address here. $subject is equal to Idea Pro contact form submitted. All right. And then our message is going to equal this. And then here we're going to put WP mail. And so we're going to say $2, $subject, and $message. Now you can send attachments and headers and all kinds of stuff in here. We're not going to worry about doing that. If you haven't seen my video where we created the HTML template email that hooks into WP mail, you should watch that, because it makes it so much easier when we're doing something like this. We can just write WP mail and the subject, the message, and it will format that information into a template email and create it and send it as an HTML email, right? So the message, now we're going to start writing this out. So the message, and we're going to do dot equals, because we're going to concatenate that message and add to it, is equal to, let's say, name, and we're going to say dot name, and then we're going to add a couple of things here, and we're going to break to the next line. So then we're going to say message dot equals, and that's going to be email. And we're going to add that and a space dot email. Wow, can't type. Dot, and whoops, and we're going to add a break in there. $message dot equals, and that's going to be phone, and that's going to be, let's put a space in there, dot phone dot, and a break, and then $message. So before we do message for the content up here, for the comments, we need to wrap that comments in a WP auto P tag, which will create P tags around paragraphs. So if someone writes a bunch of comments in your comment box and they separate it in paragraphs, you'll see that same paragraph on the email. So we're going to say comments is equal to, and that's calling this up here. We're going to wrap it in WP auto P tag or function. And so we're going to say comments. And then we're going to do comments equals str underscore replace. And we're going to have to do two of these because the first one we're going to get P tags, and we're just going to remove that first P tag, and that's going to be comments, and then comments equals str underscore replace. Now this one we're going to remove the closing P tag, and we're going to replace it with a break. Okay, in comments. Okay, because paragraph tags aren't recognized in most email platforms, so we have to send a break command to separate that. And we could actually add in two breaks, because one break is going to bring the text to the next line, which is going to be up against each other. Two breaks is going to separate, make a little bit of space in between those paragraphs. Now P tags automatically do that for most styles, where you have a paragraph, then space, paragraph, then space, paragraph. But if we don't add two breaks in there, it will bunch the paragraphs up against each other. So we want to separate those into individual paragraphs with a little bit of space in between them. So we're actually going to use two paragraphs in there. So then now we can say $message dot equals and comments, whoops, let's do this, comments, and we're going to actually add a break here to send those comments underneath that comment there. So then we can say dot comments, and we can add a break here. Whoops, don't want that at the end. And we can add a couple of breaks after these comments and say anything else that we want to add to the bottom of the email. Thank you. We'll just say thank you, right? So now it's going to take all this information and put it into the message here and send that through the email. So now we've got down here, we've got the return is return success is equal to 1, return message is equal to your information has been received. And so now we're going to echo, we're going to echo, and we're going to say JSON encode, and we're going to do $return. So on the previous video where we created a form submit, at this point, we actually did a redirect where it redirected the user to the thank you page. But on this call, we want to send information back to that JSON, to that JavaScript file. Okay, so now we're going to get return and message here sent back. So we're going to save that. We're going to come over here to our ideapro.js. And now here in the callback, this data is going to come through. We're going to call it JData. We're going to JSON.parse that data. We're going to parse out that JSON data. And then underneath here, we can do something with that data, right? So we've got the data that's coming through is success and message. So we can say if JData dot, and then we're going to come over here and see success. So JData.success is equal to 1. Whoops, it's equal to 1. We're going to process this information. Now, as I said before, if you wanted to, you could say else if JData.success is equal to 2. Whoops. Then you could do something here that says no, your information wasn't submitted for whatever reason. But we're not going to get into that on this video. So JData.success is equal to 1. Process this information. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is look at the message, right? So we're going to create a variable called message, and we're just going to call it mess, is equal to JData.message. Oops. All right. So now we can use that variable wherever we need to. So we're going to save that. We're going to come back over to our actual code here, and right above our form tag here, we're actually going to create another content dot equals, and we're going to create another div, and we're going to call this the ID of response div. So we're going to copy that, save. We're going to come back over to our JS here, and we're going to say $ and hash response div. If you don't know how to use jQuery, basically a hash sign, it's just like style sheets. A hash sign is for IDs. A period like this is for classes. Typically, if you're doing something like this, you want to use an ID because you want to pick the specific one. All IDs should be unique on a page. If you did a dot, as a class, anything that was using that class on the page, you would be affecting from this jQuery call, right? So $ the hashtag response div dot, and now we're going to do HTML, and that is going to be our our mess. So now basically we're going to get the message coming from the response over here and say your information has been received. Okay, and so we're going to add a little bit of style to this, because if we look at, we added this div up here and there's nothing in the div. So if we go to our live page, our contact us live page here, and refresh, you don't see anything in that div. It's completely blank. Now, if we went in here and said response div, right, and we come over and we refresh this page, now it's going to say response div. But we don't want anything to show up in there right now. And if we styled this right here, we could say style, padding is 20 pixels, background color is green, and color for the font is going to be white, right? And just doing that alone, now we're going to have a green box there because because of the padding that we've added. So we don't want that to show up. We want to submit that information and then change that through the jQuery. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys how to do that. So we have just this blank div here on the page, and through the jQuery we can do, and we're going to use this same one, pound response div dot CSS, and we're going to say background color, comma, and we're just going to say green. Now you could use a hexadecimal color if you wanted, but we're just going to say green. $, pound response div dot CSS. We're going to call in the color, and we're going to say hashtag 123456. We're going to do white, and then we're going to say pound response underscore div dot CSS, and it's going to be padding, and we're going to say 20 pixels. All right, so that's going to give us basically the same look that we had just a minute ago, but not until the success is equal to 1. Okay, so now all that should be running and working. So now we're going to test our form. So we're going to fill out this Joshua Herbison @gmail.com. Phone number is, we're just going to say 555.555.1212, and we're going to say this is a submission test. I hope everything works. I didn't plan this out. So there may be a mistake. All right, so we're going to hit submit, and hopefully we have that green box that shows us that the information has been submitted. And we do not. So let's inspect and see what's going on. Let's go to console. Failed to reload the resource server, responded with 500. All right, so that's basically saying that we have an error here on our index.php page. So the first thing we want to do is we want to make sure our path is right. That looks correct. So let's go through our code here and see if we have anything in here that is going to be a problem. Sanitize text field, sanitize email, make sure we have these closing semicolons on each one. Sanitize email, sanitize text field, phone, comments, sanitize text area. Oh, sanitize text area field. There we go. All right, so come over here, we want to refresh this page, make sure we got all that information. So now we can do Joshua Herbison @gmail.com, phone number 555-555.1212, and this is a test. I hope this works. I hope there is no more errors. All right, so we're going to click this button, and we have another error. Oh, there it goes. Woohoo! All right, so now this green box showing up here, and it says your information has been received. Now we should get an email, and we did. So here we go. Open that up. So now we have name, Joshua Herbison, email, my email address, phone number, comments, and this is a test. I hope this works. I hope there is no errors. And then down here we have thank you. So that is the email that we get from that send mail. And again, this is a broken template here because I just was messing around with stuff. But basically we've created this template for every email that goes out, and it creates an HTML email that goes out. If you haven't watched that video, you should watch it because it makes your every email that goes out look so much better, all right? And so instead of just having a basically simple text-based email, all right? So our function's working, everything's working. We got the fields in there. You can add more fields if you want to. When you add a field into the code there, you just need to add the fields here, append those fields, and then capture that information on this process index.php page. But that is how we are going to do it for this video, and I try to keep it as simple as possible. Probably one of the longest videos I've made so far, but I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you guys can use this for your benefits. I will link the file for this code in the video in the description. Please type out the code yourself. The only way you can really learn is to write it out yourself and make errors. And go back and fix stuff and be like, oh, I forgot this and I forgot this. Find out what those errors are. I've made videos to show you how to pull up errors and how to see errors, whether it's a JavaScript error or a PHP error. But write those out yourself so that you know what you're writing each time. It just helps. If you copy and paste someone else's code, you don't remember it next time you need it. And so write it out, but you can use this this code here if you need to and build upon it and test more stuff out. Like this video if you guys like it. Comment, let me know what you guys are using these videos for, if you're learning to develop or if you work for yourself or you work for a company. That's interesting to me to know what you guys are actually doing out there. So I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks.